Welcome to the LeanBlog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban from the LeanBlog. This is episode number 27 of the LeanBlog Podcast for June 18th, 2007. Today's discussion is part two of a conversation I started with Jim Baran of the firm Value Stream Leadership. This was recorded about 6 months ago. If you want to hear part one of the discussion, you can find that and other earlier episodes at the website leanpodcast.org. Jim is a very respected and very specialized recruiter working with companies trying to find lean manufacturing talent for roles and leadership roles within their organization. If you'd like to reach Jim, you can contact him and his firm at their website, www.valuestreamleadership.com. I mean, how do you filter through or thinking? I talk to people who are thinking about moving on, where they've for one reason or another gotten frustrated with their company's approach to lean. They're very squarely in the middle of the organization. They feel like they've done all they can. They feel like they're ready to move on. How do you filter through trying to figure out who hasn't been effective because of either their approach or maybe a lack of deep lean understanding versus people who have stalled out because of something that might be rightfully pinned on decisions or leadership strategies that they're not yet at a level to impact?
Okay. I'm always looking for energy and ideas that are not mainstream. So, I call a lot of what I would say, what's in demand, what isn't in demand, how can people, and I think a lot of it has to do with just presentation. A lot of people haven't really kind of thought about a lot of things that they've done and haven't documented, and I always encourage people to kind of keep a run and journal of some of the significant milestones that they've achieved. But, a lot of the, when you look at, reaching out from your current role or whatever I call, user defined. We look at folks that have basically created opportunities to move lean through, in most cases, non-traditional, non-mainstream areas. And, and that includes those people that have identified, however large or small, revenue growth opportunity where there wasn't that before. To me, that just, it signals distinctiveness, and I listen to that a lot, and that's what clients are coming to us to identify folks that are just not. They may be great trainers, they may be good functional leaders, but there's something missing there. They've been in the journey for 2 to 3 years. They want to see how do we push to the next level, and how do we get to the next level. Again, let's say, and I think there's been a big overplay on lean product development and lean accounting, and I think that's certainly, an area where, it's getting, some attention now, and I think,
right.
For the next 5 years, it'll get a lot more, but, those are really solid growth areas, but unless you're a design engineer or accountant, a seminar book is not going to get you into the thick of what's happening in those areas. Right. I think the knowledge forward of understanding, the systems integration of lean product development into manufacturing and beyond. I think it's key. Speed to market now in some industries is, it's survival. So I think, knowledge in that area, but I think if you just say, okay, I've been a lean manufacturing guy and I want to be a lean product development guy, you're gonna,
right.
You're not gonna make the bus.
Yeah. Now, go ahead.
No, I was also, the other thing is, and I think I mentioned real briefly, was, on the transactional side, because, that's where I'm seeing just significant growth. And I could take a transactional lean person and find them an opportunity rapidly. And I've got people that are clients that, have, whether that be in a service organization, but I also have manufacturing companies that are looking to, take a more systemic approach to their operating system, and it's expanding beyond just production. So it's non-production lean, and so we're talking about implementing lean where paper, not parts, are moving. Perhaps it's not as sexy as manufacturing and fun, but transactional office lean I consider to be is becoming more art and less trial and error, and really the demand is essentially increasing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I found that the folks that we've taken out of manufacturing and placed them into the service industry, basically can tell you that, the waste in the service sector, and I know you can probably echo this, Mark, is just much more difficult to see. But even more key to that is that the resistance to change is more passive, and it's under the radar a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get somebody nodding their head, and I've got some favorite stories in regards to some of the things that some of the manufacturing folks that went over in the service sector have said about some of the passive resistance there that is just driving them nuts. But it's just another element and expansion of again, the people side of lean and the cultural leadership is to gain that experience.
Yeah, I mean, just from my perspective, I jumped from manufacturing to healthcare about a year and a half ago, and there's a couple different things that jump to mind. I mean, for one, we talk about lean being about people. That's absolutely universal, and we talk about kind of the interactions between employees and their supervisors. I know, at least in the healthcare setting, very, very familiar to the manufacturing world. People complaining about not being listened to. Managers don't know, what they're struggling with day to day. I can make the pitch, at least, somebody interested in going from manufacturing to healthcare, that the people issues and how to lead and interact and facilitate, I would expect apply, to any different type of service industry, whether it's healthcare or, another industry.
Sure. But, again, I mean, I think the skills, the tools are essential, and the knowledge of that. And there's just a broad area for growth and every application of every tool. And even in some cases, there may be, a new development to combine tools and create a new tool. I mean, it's certainly not off limits as well, but, but the leadership and, there are just so many folks that I've talked to that are just perfunctory, focused on, and it's more, again, it's in some cases, and certainly this isn't applied broadly, but it's almost us against them. And it's like you kind of get that sense when you talk to folks, and I can kind of go on for hours about and maybe we can highlight some of the areas of what the areas of dissatisfaction are of people and companies, and why people come to us in the first place, or at least a candidate does. But I think one other, just to kind of get back, and I'm thinking out loud here, and we were talking about, how people maybe can look at opportunities a little bit differently, but, more so than when we first started in '95. I mean, we were working for, some big companies, and they were, hiring like crazy. And, we were part of that food chain for a long time. But, I would say in the last couple of years, I mean, the smaller companies are really the ones that are stepping up. And, I've got to fly out to Rhode Island next week, new client. And I got to tell you, I mean, this is a $50 million business. And I'm talking to the chairman, and I'm meeting with the chairman and the president, and both of these guys are table pounding, just animate, passionate. Why didn't we do this before? Right. And, help us find the right person. So again, I mean, we'll go out there, we'll kind of look at, their operation and kind of line up with the expectations, and we'll go out and find some people. But really the message here is that there's a lot of talented lean folks that maybe should really kind of look at the lean journeys that are fresh and that are at smaller companies. The positive of that is you can kind of escape that bureaucracy, enjoy more responsibility. You can really hone that promotion of ideas in real time versus 8 weeks from now or 7 months from now, and really have some fun with it and hone their skills wall to wall versus just in a small functional area. But it's for those people that are just kind of tired of trying to hug an elephant, this is a great way to just ride a tiger, because we're finding more and more smaller businesses are really embracing it. And before it was just it was something that a lot of companies, bigger companies, threw a lot of money at, and there's a lot of talent there that's what I call underutilized. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's there's been a preponderance of the case studies and things posted on the LeanBlog. Almost everything I run across in the news, via Google searches and things are about the small family, privately owned companies more so than it is the big, large global corporations. So it sounds like there are a lot of good opportunities if people have gotten frustrated, or at their wits' end with the large environment to go to a place where they can have more of an impact and contribute. And it sounds like maybe to summarize what I heard you say, and tell me if I got this right. We talk about how can people stand out, or if they've stalled out in the organization. It sounds like the one thing you're looking for is some spark of having tried something creative whatever your sphere of influence was, whether it was a department or a plant or a division. That as long as you've had some spark of not just making excuses and giving in, well, here's why I can't accomplish things. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's very fair to say. And again, I think it's probably there in a lot of cases, and I think maybe it's been either underutilized or it's not been respected, appreciated, supported. But it's there in a lot of cases. But where I really find the gap, and I only have a certain amount of time, and I certainly can't pry too much information out of people because, I kind of hold back a little bit because I expect them. I mean, I look at a very solid transformation leader, lean savvy, to be a great promoter. Mm-hmm. And if I'm talking to you on the phone and, it's 45 minutes has passed and it's more same old, and you're not really selling me on you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how are you going to sell the lean idea? So I'm paying attention to that as well. But, really, I think when I take a look at, and I kind of break out lean and transformation leadership. Really, I think it's kind of 1/3, skill and tools, and it's 1/3 planning and execution, but it's also 1/3 promotion and selling.
Yeah, so
that's leadership. I mean, selling ideas and backing those ideas up with some hardcore examples and experimentation and trying things differently. So, so that's a fair point to say is that we look for those little nuances where somebody's really tried to push the envelope, and, failure is okay here. I mean, that's the beauty of it all, but you got to try, and you got. But what I also find that people, and I think the best advice I could give to somebody that's actively, and maybe contemplating a career change is really to kind of go back and look at their career in some space, as far as documentation of the different things that have happened, in the career. I guess looking at all the resistance encountered, taking a look at the different applications, how long, what time, and really providing a kind of a very solid brushstroke on what's taken place, what initiatives have been acted on, what haven't, what have you tried, what's failed. I mean, failure to me is you tried.
Yeah.
And I'm, lessons learned is what this is all about. So I'm really trying to learn that, where I think people are trying to promote, okay, either I tried this and it didn't work. Well, okay, then countermeasure. How did you approach that, failure? And maybe it was a timing issue. Maybe it was a readiness issue. It could be a lot of different issues, but I want to think a little deeper in that because, I think it's my job to kind of bring out that level of distinction there and really, present to them, this is somebody that, you're going to invest a lot of money in, Mr. Client, and, these are the things that you could probably expect, and these are the things that have been done and tried, and these are the gains, but these are also the things that didn't work, and these are the why that the things didn't work. And it could be a lot of different reasons, but, if I've always counseled people is to basically, I think the question of what was on, resumes and how people can kind of approach the market maybe a little bit more methodically is to really look at developing instead of a cover letter, create a bio, and really in that bio, kind of identify lean knowledge lineage, identify, the opportunities that you've, breakthrough. I mean, what have you done that, what have you, either that you've trampled on legacy or you're out there and you're creating fresh tracks in the sand. I mean, give us something that we can move on and we can act on and we can expand on. And then it's always like, okay, here's your development path. you know, many people say, well, I'm looking for a director role, or I'm looking for, again, it's that job title level. I mean, what is it in your background in the grand scheme of Lean, let's say, for the next 30 years? I mean, what do you need to gain to keep abreast of what I consider to be an active, passionate, Lean professional?
Yeah.
And so a lot of interesting things there.
Yeah. So here's my attempt at trying to summarize what some of what we've heard today. Kind of take the old cliche and kind of twist it a little bit. So it sounds like a couple of things that are important are what you know, or they say it's not what you know, but who you learned it from and how you sell it to other people. Might be a good way of summarizing some of your points, or would you add to that?
And how you engage.
And how you engage people.
What's your method of engagement? Versus, is my engagement based on legacy, or am I going to create a new path? And what have I tried? I mean, and there's a risk in that as well, because I think if you take a look at least my lessons learned from some of the folks that have made some significant career progress and driving Lean or at senior executive levels, basically, also look back and say, it's interesting because people that come in here think that they have to actually redo things to gain some credibility and put their name on a brand on what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already invested 3 years of getting to this point. We want you to go from this point forward and not just look at some of maybe things that are broken or need some attention, but it's again, that comes from some folks that look at, okay, let's look at the Lean journey in its total aspect. And let's look at it from, okay, this has been done, lessons learned. Hopefully we're creating a Lean community within the company, a knowledge-based organization, and everybody's learning. And I think, things are there. What are things that maybe we could do differently and, move the needle forward as opposed to maybe just pointing a finger at something that didn't work in the past and fixing that. There's probably different priorities because, business changes, business needs change, and people change. So, it's a pretty dynamic there.
Yeah. Now, we've talked mostly about, from the perspective of the job seeker, to turn things around a little bit. I mean, what kind of comments would you have for companies that are looking to retain their Lean people that they've already invested in and built up through their organization?
Yeah. And again, my point of reference is a lot of times from the folks that are very talented, that are discreetly looking to make a change based on, what I consider to be, and I can kind of categorize those into really 4 major groups. And then I can kind of explain a little bit about the retention issue. But, really the people that are coming to me that are actively engaged, well paid, things are okay, but they're starting to see a lack of vision and maybe commitment, by senior management. Maybe it was at one point in time very strong, but, Lean puts pressure on business and it puts pressure on people. And, whereas, the concentration before was let's drive Lean, get a few quick wins, some low-hanging fruit, they're on to bigger and better things now. Acquisitions, maybe the company suffering and whatever. But again, people are kind of sensing, well, that vision is kind of waned, that commitment certainly is, or the vision's cloudy, the commitment's kind of waned. So, they're kind of saying, I'm not feeling comfortable here anymore. So maybe it's, kind of a lack of communication there. And if that's the case, then, I would encourage somebody to kind of, look at, probably looking at a different opportunity.
Yeah.
The lack of resources to get the job done. I've talked to so many people. It's one guy, 100 plants, change the world. And it's the expectation too. And that's when we visit a client, so every client we take on, we personally visit, we talk to the senior leadership team, we get a really good idea. And again, that's why I come back and, then I say, I don't think so.
Tell me more. Tell us more about that. You talked about earlier, screening out and rejecting clients. Is some of that based off of your sense of either how committed they are to Lean, or, are you trying to screen out companies that may have a 1-year program and then get tired of it, where, candidates and people are going to lose out?
As blatant as, I think it's a way to trim our workforce, and I've had that, several times. It doesn't come out right away.
Sure.
But when you really try to go down what we call as, because of our competitors out there. I don't want to get into our whole evaluation instrument,
Well,
but
sure.
it could be as simple as what are they? What's their expectation of the lean journey? And barring leadership talent aside, we get into profiles and cultural fits and those types of things later. But it really is. I mean, it's just a kind of meeting of the minds to kind of see, okay, well, and I'm not expecting when I go and talk to, a COO or a CEO or a VP of operations, I'm not expecting them to be, just a great,
not to be an expert in it.
Yeah, they don't have to be an expert. So, I just kind of look for, okay, but, somehow, somewhere, you've engaged with the idea that this is a solution for your business. Is it a short-term solution? Is it a long-term solution? Then we get into like resources but I'll tell you what, I mean, the best thing that ever happens to us when I go visit a client is I just walk the shop floor.
Mm-hmm.
I look at people.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you there was a very large company that we were evaluating. I mean, they came to us and asked, and they had several needs, but they had a senior executive need to really kind of put the journey together. And I flew there and I visited with them, and I tell you that the best experience I had was and this is a large building. It was kind of like that you can kind of vision the Pentagon walking from one end to the other, but you just walk this building. And just to see the people heads down, I mean, the cubicles are just looks like prison cells, and and then talking to the senior executive leader, I mean, grilled me extensively on what I know and all these other things, and really trying to get into the expectation roles, and I mean, never really thought it out. I think this was dictated to this person, but this position would report to this person. And I'll tell you what, I just, when I left that building, I looked at, I just said, I don't know of anybody that I would put in that job because they would be angry with me because this is just, it's not going to work. And so I think, just beyond the dialogue, we always walk through the operation, we touch, we talk to the folks on the shop floor, we just get a kind of a sense and a feel. The same as if you were, a candidate for a particular job opportunity, and you kind of get that, inner sense about, is this a good deal?
Yeah,
or,
you need to go check that out.
Is there a hidden agenda here? So I spend probably half of my time looking for that hidden agenda. And, sometimes we kind of just think about it. But, I mean, and again, I mean, I don't, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I mean, there's just a lot of business out there. And I don't want to put somebody in a position that I don't feel strongly about and I couldn't sell. So I always use that as a baseline. Can I sell this opportunity to somebody? And are they going to be there 3 years from now? Because I think when I get into recruiting relationships, if we're not talking, 5 years from now, I haven't done my job.
So I talk about focusing on the long term. It sounds like, you don't want just that commission or that fee from that retained search. You're looking at your reputation and people's career paths for the long term, it sounds like.
Yeah, and again, way back to the early discussion, Mark, I think that's the big difference between, let's say, a retain and a contingent. I mean, the contingent are basically out there trying to close deals. I mean, they're going to put warm bodies in slots as much as they can, to get that cash register going. But I mean, we've got 6 people in our firm. They're all busy. And my goal is that they'll always be busy. And there, again, is just enough opportunity out there. So I guess when I call a candidate, and maybe they weren't ready to make a move 2 years ago, but when I call them and I keep calling them with opportunities that are pretty valid and are pretty decent and aren't mainstream and are like, okay, Jim kind of knows what he's talking about, they're going to listen. Yeah. And, and then maybe, and I had this happen time and time again. And, when I call somebody 2 years later, I'd like to look at that. And things are still good and things are still strong. But, what I've always counseled people is to, look at things in a 2-year window. I mean, in your current company and externally. Yeah. But that's going to force yourself to keep abreast of what's going on if you're going to look inside and look outside. And I don't think anybody is ever going to disregard anybody that doesn't have at least an ear open for a new opportunity, because it could reinforce the fact, and that goes into the retention issue. kind of going out there once in a while maybe reinforces the fact that you got it pretty good.
Sure. It's good to remember that sometimes.
Yeah, it really does. But compensation, I think, is another, issue, why people leave. And we could probably spend hours on this topic, and I've got horror stories and I've got good stories, but, I always look at it like, if I've got somebody, at your doorstep that's going to have the potential to save you at least $3 million a year, and you're going to put them in the same pay grade as somebody that's creating waste, does that really make sense?
Sure.
So, go ahead.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can talk about that and some other topics, again in future podcasts. And I'm expecting, hopefully listeners to the podcast will have some questions, and if they send those in to me, maybe we can incorporate some of their questions into a future discussion. But there's one more thing I wanted to talk about today, because there's been a lot of debate about this on the blog, and a couple of people wanted me to ask you your thoughts on this. There's been a lot of debate about the new the Shingo Lean, or the Lean certification is sponsored by the Shingo Prize, SME, AME. What the value of that? How are employers going to view that? A candidate with certification or without. What kind of feedback are you hearing, or what are your perspectives on certification in general, maybe?
Sure. Honestly, Mark, in 10 years of recruiting business transformation leaders, I have never heard a client mention Lean certification as a requirement or qualification.
Mm-hmm.
We work with many companies that are actually regarded as having benchmark Lean operating systems as well. I mean, I work with a variety of different companies, but we work with some of the mature operating systems as well. But that topic's never come up. And I've talked to both HR folks, and I've talked to both, and actually the hiring, manager is really our primary resource. But, I've never had that come up in 10 years.
Yeah.
So
it makes me,
maybe something new.
Well, I mean, it makes me wonder where the demand or the perceived demand for that comes from, or if it's just somebody sees an opportunity. Well, we have all the Six Sigma certifications. We need to create one for Lean. Or, somebody made a comment on the blog, which is kind of diabolical, thinking that if you could use this as a filter, if a company's asking for the Lean certification, maybe to stay away from them, that they may just be thinking, Six Sigma, or they may not really understand, there's a lot to be gained through Lean experience, and like you said, who you've learned from, as opposed to, can you pass the rigmarole of a certification protocol?
Yeah, I would say, in my window of experience, and let's say yesterday's and today's talent market, really is honestly looking at it, I kind of think that the immediate primary value recipients of Lean certification programs are primarily the associations that are sponsoring them.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're starting out, certification might be a very valid option, but then there are, many exceptional seminars. I've attended myself a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Conferences that can also help you accelerate your knowledge, but not to mention that the networking opportunities that conferences and even the seminars that I've attended have just been phenomenal. But, I look at it like, lessons without lessons learned, are lessons are just lessons. And if I was to look at it like, just an analogy, if you take a look at, let's say, and I've explained this to people before, regards to different ideas, but I always use creating great music. That's great music's not made really by a performer. Well, it's made by a performer, and it's also the performance delivery. You look at a performer who knows how to read the notes correctly, deliver them in the right pitch at the right time. But the key there is really the captivating passion. Passion to me and to the clients and what I sell is really where the skill and the art intersects. It's the passion, not the skill, that's contagious. I mean, a person could have the theoretical knowledge and just be an awesome knowledge resource for standardized work, but unless you can get up in front of the class, and I just had this situation with a client probably 2 weeks ago, and that's it's not flowing, and it's just that there's no connection. But passion's the one that captures the hearts and minds of the audience and gets them to kind of move their heads, smile, sometimes in Lean, bring a tear, I guess, but, and in music, passions would get people to throw their underwear on the stage. In our world, exceptional Lean performers are really the artists that make it look elegantly simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about creating that simplicity. But, there's a lot of work behind that
yeah.
you don't want people to see. But, the creating simplicity out of chaos to me is really the true magic of Lean. So, how do you certify that? I don't know.
It's hard to capture that. Yeah.
But I think, again, if there's a structured approach and it's a knowledge, I'm pro knowledge.
Sure.
Go wherever you can and certainly go if the company's paying for it. But, I don't know if in fact, if you were going to enter that with the mindset, I'm going to get certified, therefore my market position, and I'll be more marketable. In our world, and in mine, it may be different in somebody else's, but in our world, that's not gonna be your leverage.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see how that develops over time, I think. So, well, Jim, I really want to thank you for being generous with your time and talking about so many different topics in the realm of the Lean talent market and Lean recruiting. It's really been great having you here.
I've appreciated the opportunity. It's I've lived it for a long time, so it's exciting. I am excited every day when I'm looking or I'm trying to close another deal, because it's just grown, from what was to what is now. It's just a phenomenal a talent journey, so to speak, as opposed to the Lean journey. But it's just it's great. So appreciate the opportunity for having me say the things that I said, and hopefully that helps somebody out there.
All right. Well, I'm sure it will. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening. This has been the LeanBlog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.